All right, everybody. Gaza War Sit Rep Day 129. John's back. I
Hey,
guess we
Justin.
can I guess we can say our usual no end in sight because we're certainly back to that. Um it's been a stressful uh couple days since the attacks on Rafah started. And I guess the last time you and I talked, John, we were talking about how how extreme it would be if they chose to attack Rafah, and now here we are.
It seems like here we are. It's really it's shocking the number of people, the conditions that they're in, asking people to move again, which is just it's like that. It's such a cumbersome operation for people to move, and to move to Rafah has been like a 4 month process,
Yeah.
and now they're going to ask people to move out of Rafah in like a 4 day window, right? It's just it's a disaster, and the Israelis are seem completely committed to it. Netanyahu went down and talked to the troops on the border. They're saying that there's 4 battalions left in Rafah that have to be defeated, or else they lose the war. Like Netanyahu said, we lose the war. So the whole framing even doesn't give any room to step down, or
Yeah,
yeah,
it's just
they seem
completely made up figure. 4 battalions. I mean,
it's a completely made up figure out of a completely
absolutely
made up
no.
number.
Yeah, they have no intelligence. They have no information to
They
be
have
able
no
to do that.
intelligence. And if they did, they would have found their prisoners, right? If they knew how many battalions were in each area, they would know when they were done fighting in that area. And we can clearly see with the fighting in the north that that's not the case.
By the
And
way, it doesn't even fit with their own figures. Sorry, I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
no, no, but it doesn't fit with their own figures. Let's do that because
So
28 battalions would be 28,000
that's
fighters, which is lower than the number that the Israelis say, and considerably lower than the number that we
yeah.
know there to be.
But
It's
let's
like,
let's do it. Let's go through this. 28,000 people is who they've killed, right? They killed 12,000 of them are children. And of course, today, one of the pro Israel people said that children participated in the attack, the October 7th attack. So they've reached new moral lows in terms of inhumanity. So now they're trying to say the children are killers, which I guess one only says to try to justify killing children, but which they've done. 12,000 children and something like 8,000 women, 8,000 men. So if unless they're I think they only started counting children as combatants yesterday. So assuming they're not counting children as combatants, they're saying if they're saying 8,000, I think the custom is to say that all 8,000 men they killed are Hamas,
but they're saying they
right?
killed 10,000. So they're
Okay.
saying that they killed more Qassam fight, and they're saying Qassam, they're not saying resistance. They're
Okay.
saying that they killed 2,000 more Qassam fighters than all men killed in the entire war
So
to this date.
maybe they are counting children as combatants then. So assuming they killed 10,000, and what's a battalion? A battalion's 500 men or so, isn't it?
1,000, yeah, I think that's what they're using the
Yeah,
numbers for 1,000.
roughly. So they're saying there are 4,000 left.
Well, they're saying there's 4 completely intact battalions. And so what they're
Right.
saying about what's happening in the north is that they're saying once they degrade a battalion by 30% combat effectiveness, that
Hmm,
renders that battalion combat ineffective, which is
I
a
see.
military term, that
That's
is a
probably what
temporary
happens to
term.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's actually lots of military studies that show that armies do better when they're like when it's two jobs for one person kind of thing. That they run smoother. I'm not saying that that's the argument that you would want to make if you're in the army,
Hmm.
but the point is that it's not eliminating the fighting capacity of these groups or anything even close to that, because degrading by a third. Um, it's not, you're not destroying the organization, and that's the fighting force, right? They also are saying that they're targeting the Hamas government, which is still in power in the north and the south. The Israelis are killing police officers now. When they went and reinvaded the north, they attacked the hospitals again that were being reconstituted. But the IDF bragged about attacking all of the police stations. They said that they destroyed every police station in the north. And then the last couple days, they've been killing the police that are escorting the aid shipments across the border. So the Israelis facilitate the crossing of the aid, and then it gets on the other side of the border and they shoot the people that they coordinated the aid transfer with. So uh, I don't know, and to try to claim that when Netanyahu says if we don't fight in Rafah, then we've lost the war. We can't say that we've won the war. That's just such a weird criteria for them to be hanging on to, especially these guys who said that Netanyahu said that not only was they going to destroy Hamas, but they were going to destroy the idea of Hamas in future generations, and they were going to de-radicalize the Gaza Strip. So I don't know at this point why their numbers suggest that there's 4 intact battalions in Rafah, but there surely are. Um, there's lots of reason to believe that Qassam has entirely intact battalions that haven't entered the fight yet. And Rafah's a significant place, right? Like if this war was in 2013 or 2010, the Israelis would have said Rafah was the most important place to attack. So, in some senses, it was always the question was like, what are they going to do about Rafah when they were telling everybody to go there? Eventually, they were going to be telling everybody to go exactly where they're going to attack. And there's the human
Yeah.
misery that Israel piles on top of these massacres. It's just I don't know, 130 days. What is it? 129 days now. It's just the
Yeah.
tempo and the pace is just incredible.
And we're headed for worse. Whatever we've seen, whatever we've seen until now is what they're going to do in Rafah is worse because it's other people in tents and it's over 1 million people in temporary housing.
Yeah, plus all the people that live in the city, right? Like people are
Yeah,
all still living in
300,000
their
people.
houses in Rafah, which is a different situation than when they were fighting in the north. So people are still in their homes, and that's the thing. They're dropping these houses on top of entire families um, in Rafah right now. And it's yeah, the ceasefire talks were to try to head off this happening because this attack on Rafah is a multi-week. It's the resumption of the war. It's a significant maneuver on the ground. Like the fight in Khan Yunis took 6 weeks. Like it took from the
Well,
22nd.
and this is different because in Gaza City, we've said this in Gaza City after all most of the people left is when the battle started. In Khan Yunis, after most of the people left is when the battle started. In Rafah, there's nowhere, there's no way the people are leaving. There's nowhere for them to go. So it's going to be a new situation in terms of the battle between the resistance and the Israelis. Because up until now, when the Israelis have attacked civilian concentrations and hospitals, as far as I know, the resistance hasn't fought pitched battles around these civilian areas, and it doesn't make sense to because the Israelis will just call airstrikes and obliterate the area. So there's no fighting. You can't fight the Israelis. I mean, it's ironic because the human shields. The Israelis claim that the Palestinians use human shields, but in fact, the Palestinian resistance cannot fight the Israelis around civilians because the Israelis will attack the civilians. So there's no ability to fight the Israelis around civilians precisely because civilians are the target of the Israeli military.
And
So
that's what makes
this,
these hospital attacks that much more appalling. Like the footage from Nasser Hospital, yesterday, shooting from the outside of the hospital with quadcopters, shooting into the inside of the hospital. So people are inside the hospital, shot dead in the entranceway to the ER, and no one can come and help them because it's just shooting anyone that comes to pick up the body inside the ER of the hospital. So it's like whatever the opposite of being defended by the resistance is, it's like the Israelis
They
are just
can't.
taking pot shots from the
Yeah.
doorway.
Yeah.
And it's the first thing they do, right? As soon as they get to Rafah, the first reports of the ground operation in Rafah is that the hospitals they're bombing all around the hospitals. It's their primary objective. And they have no human intelligence. Any of these numbers, the Americans and the Israelis saying these numbers, they just 10,000 fighters. The Israelis are trying to
Made up.
say 10,000 fighters wounded and 10,000 killed. It's an absurd number. There's no evidence for that number whatsoever. There's no evidence in Israeli videos. They publish videos all day, all war, and there's nothing like that. There's nothing like those battles that would take, what you would need to get up to those thousands,
Yeah.
like we see when they do with civilians, right? Like the civilians get up into the thousands because they're dropping entire houses down on top of 4 generations of a family. That's how you get into the thousands. Fighting individual units that operate in 7 and 10 men cells in an urban environment to kill 10,000 in that way in 3 months, it's not even serious.
Yeah.
It's not serious.
So, should we talk about this prisoner, the supposed prisoner, uh, the fact that, or the reporting that the Israelis managed to free two old prisoners in Rafah, Simon Marman and Norberto Luis Har. The thing is, I don't know. I don't know what I believe about this. There's so much systematic lying about it that, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. I
What
feel
have you
exact same
heard?
way. They
Yeah.
lie, they lie so structurally, and then there's just the permanent military censor on everything means that that the Israelis sat there and told you
Yeah.
what to report. So even that information, like the lies plus that put together, just makes it. Um, I
So
mean, I don't know.
maybe
Qassam said
more.
that
Yeah.
6 other people died in the
Mhm.
operation, so they rescued 2 and killed 6. How would you feel if you're the families of these captives that you're trying to come in and rescue while killing? Well, we maybe will get a quarter of you safe. 75% of you are going to die in this operation. It's so deranged. It's such a
Yeah.
instead of just exchanging those men are civilians. Those are the men that the Israelis freed today, are the men that could have been released on the first day, literally. They're not going in there and saving the battalion commander of the Gaza division's northern sector. They're not getting that guy. They're getting guys that were living above ground too. That's also something that's noticeable about that story. They're keeping the old guys above ground, like living in a family house, presumably, not living down in the, pits of hell or whatever, which every single person that's come out has said they were treated exceptionally well. The last group of the women that came out said that they were underground on the first day and the guards were armed. And the one woman went up to them and said, um, like, we're old, we don't pose any threat to you. Do you need to have guns? And the like captain went off and talked to the other captain, and they put their guns away for the rest of the the rest of the time. None of the captives saw their guards guns. Like, those are the kind of stories that we're hearing coming out. And I don't know why, for Israel's sake, that they believe that it's better for their institutions, their state institutions, to say that we're going to either not care about you and leave you for months and months. And then when we do care after 5 months, like how terrifying would that have been after you've been in captivity for 5 months and all of a sudden, they killed 100 Palestinians in that raid. So that's happening all around. It was probably the most terrifying moment that any of them had this entire time. And that's what all the prisoners say. They say the scariest time was dealing with the Israelis.
Yeah.
All because Israel won't do the most like elementary prisoner exchange that the Russians and the Ukrainians just did one a few days ago. It's
They
no
do them
big
all the
deal.
time. Yeah. They do them all the time.
And Israel acts like it's an impossible thing that could never happen. uh, it's a perfectly normal military situation, and the fact that there's prisoners who are soldiers who like are categorized as prisoners of war would give Israel even more impetus to have a prisoner exchange. So they just want the genocide, and that's the part that like I don't think that they ever come back from. I don't know
They,
how, as a state, you come back from that. Lying to your people, your people know that you're never, if you get captured, you're going to get forgotten about, or maybe you're going to get killed and told that it's because we have a secret doctrine called the Hannibal doctrine, and that's why your
which
family had to be killed.
which is a secret to absolutely nobody and is reported and discussed in the media constantly.
Yeah,
So I heard that the air raids were some kind of reprisal for a major operation in Khan Yunis where they lost what they Israelis call a difficult situation
yeah,
uh,
difficult
in
situation.
in Khan Yunis where they lost at least 10 soldiers in an ambush.
Mhm.
And Qassam reports at least 10. There's apparently Hebrew sources that 14 were injured and unknown number of dead. They're not announcing, but
They just don't announce.
yeah, they don't
They just
announce.
don't announce to their own people in this country where they all have to fight in the army. It's such a strange disposition to be like, if this war is to reinstill faith in Israeli institutions, they just are making it harder on themselves as they go.
Yeah, this is it's hard to know what to say about this kind of end game. What I remember when we started, I think we did a show very early on, probably in October, where we were kind of surmising that the war was going to go on for a long time. And we kind of talked about the parallel tracks, like Israel's trying to cause a civilian collapse, and the Palestinian resistance is trying to defeat the Israeli military. And it's like, who's gonna get there first? And it's still a race. It's still a
It's not
race.
clear. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's still not clear. How many bulldozers do they have?
Yeah.
I just don't. They're
And
not
that's why, like, what
unlimited.
is this assault gonna look like on Rafah after they've withdrawn several of their most important units to be sort of reconstituted, and after so much of their armor has been traded away?
Yeah. And Rafah is connected to Khan Yunis. So presumably all the fighters from Khan Yunis have no trouble getting to Rafah for the fight. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And they're withdrawing significantly. They withdrew back again out of Gaza City um, after a bunch of sniper attacks. Basically, they pulled out of Gaza City. And every time they pull out, we find all of these unreported horrors, like just dead people in the streets that like are clearly civilians, clearly families, shot down in the streets, presumably just by some random tank parked on some street.
Yeah.
The soldiers aren't ever out of their tanks talking to people and saying like, go this way or go that way, or they're just treating people like they're worthless, even their own people.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the West Bank, there's more fighting, and look, it's fighting. I mean, it's these are shooting
Yeah.
battles. They're
Yeah.
battles with between Injanine and Tulkarm, I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
and
Calcilia,
Halkilia, and
Tubas.
they're having gun battles with the Israelis, and I think I heard maybe with Palestinian Authority in one of these
I think
towns.
in Calcilia there was the PA was involved. Yeah.
So
I mean, that's the next thing is what the Israelis do with the West Bank. With the West Bank is on fire as well, and so yeah, no, there's armed struggle in the West Bank on any given day in 7 or 8 places on any given day, which are pitched gun battles between Israeli forces and Palestinian resistance fighters in each separate city, particularly in the north. But I mean, they've fought in Ramallah, they've fought in Hebron, from the north to the south of the West Bank. So yeah, and they just pulled another division out of Gaza and sent them up to Lebanon. So I don't know what an attack on Rafah looks like. I don't know what a major. I mean, the State Department and Biden said today, both the White House and State Department said that there has to be. I think the word they used was credible, like a credible evacuation plan. That's
I
that's
know.
that's weeks. That takes weeks. Like we remember from Gaza City, even when they that like the you first of all you can't do it, but they're asking people to do it,
To where
right?
though? To
Yeah,
where?
they're pushing them up the coast. So basically, they're going to go up the coast, like
Sending
where
them back
Bush.
north?
Yeah, but not all the way, not back to their homes, just up the beach, basically, where they can't. Yeah, where the cars, they'll only people don't have cars, people don't have fuel, and they're asking people to move in the middle of winter,
Yeah,
and then
I don't think Biden, I don't think there's any value in anything that Biden says about anything, but in particular about this. Although there is one thing, there is one valuable thing that he said. I don't know if you saw this, John, but he said he was talking to George. He was talking about he was at a press conference after meeting the Jordanian, um, what do you call them, monarch or something, and he said, "Our we talked about our operation in Rafah."
well, that's at least honest.
Yeah, I mean, kind
I
of
mean, the
slipped.
Jordanians can say our operation too, right?
They sure
I mean,
can. They
they
sure
have a
can.
field hospital that they uh, what trumpet is that the word they
Yeah,
trumpet they
yeah,
fet um and the rest of the time they're just completely complicit in what's going on and part of they wanted to be seen as part of the attack that the US launched after their servicemen and women were killed on that Jordanian base Tower 22 that we talked about a couple weeks ago.
Shall, have you seen the new social media policy that Israeli soldiers are supposed to not share military related videos of them doing things like this?
No, I didn't. Is that true?
Yeah, apparently, this is on ARYJEAYREJ. After the release of videos, he says, featuring mentally disturbed Israeli terrorists in Gaza, the Israeli army has issued guidelines prohibiting the sharing of videos unrelated to military operations. Um, so
Well, we
they're,
found out last week that it was the IDF Operations Directorate that was in charge of that one snuff site that was like,
yeah, I don't see them following this. That this is one of the things that I think is happening. Um, one of these undercurrents that will have long-term repercussions. I don't think the Israeli army is going to be a body that is capable of following or carrying out orders or maintaining a chain of command or uh, performing basic functions. I
it
don't.
doesn't look that way.
Yeah.
Nothing by what we've seen looks that way. The way they're having these dances and parties
Yeah.
and like setting up DJ booths in people's houses that are destroyed, that's like a chain of command issue. Like, where's the leadership when that's going on?
Yeah.
And all these videos that we see them all participating. So it's obvious that the leadership is participating. And then they
Yeah.
die, and we hear they're all They're all
Yeah.
commanders.
Yeah.
They're all officers.
All commanders. Nobody gets onto the battlefield without being promoted to sergeant first, apparently. 20, 21, 19-year-old sergeants in the military.
And then they get rank inflation when they die. So it makes it hard to actually write stories about it. I was trying to
Mm.
cover the story because one of the sniper targets was somebody who participated in, we talked about it, the
Right. Yeah.
Shaldagud guy who participated in the sacking of Shifa, and he participated as a deputy commander of that
Oh.
operation. But then
So
when
he
he
was
died, he becomes a
posthumously.
commander. So then you're trying to say like, well, he wasn't the commander,
Right.
he was the deputy commander, but now he's a commander in heaven.
Yes.
It's like it's absurd. It's absurd. I mean, I think other militaries do that, but Israel does it
Yeah, from the start. I
brutally.
mean, I suspect it's like you go through basic training and then you're promoted to sergeant and then you're sent to the field or something. Because
Yeah,
I
well,
literally haven't seen a private. I haven't seen a private. I don't know if they have that rank. Um,
yeah.
you're
I mean, is
yeah,
that the other
yeah.
the people that we're not seeing that are not being counted? Like, where's these 10 from Khan
Hmm.
Yunis? Where's these snipers? The Qassam released 3 videos with 4 sniper hits, and we only know of one that was claimed. So we know that there's just from the videos that they released last week. Um, yeah, there's just mysteriously missing people, and I don't think that the Israelis are not telling the families of those people.
No, I think the families are agreeing. I saw something today where they said they suspect the families are agreeing to not have it be publicized
Yeah, and they're
in the
asking them not to have
interests.
big funerals and
Yeah, in the interests of the war. The war comes first. So is that it? I mean, were there other things you wanted to?
no, I think, yeah, the question is if what Rafah's going to look like. It is sitting here on the precipice of
Yeah,
something that feels like a disaster and a multi-week disaster.
yeah. I mean, I don't. It's like I'm. I was saying I was saying I should probably save these feelings for tanky group therapy, but like it's like the beginning of the war. I have this kind of like total dread. I'm like under a cloud of dread because it's like the whole thing is starting all over again. Um, and it's just this like I cannot project. Once the war started, you kind of get the ability to see. You kind of assume things are going to keep going on the way that they've been going on.
Yeah.
Kassam's going to destroy their armor. They're going to ambush them. They're going to release videos about it. Hezbollah's going to destroy their technical equipment on the border. They're going to murder children and attack hospitals and make fake evidence about October 7th. Like it just kind of all rolled that way for months. But now it can't that pattern can't continue. It's not a linear continuation of that pattern is not possible now because everybody's packed into Rafah.
Yeah, and now everything's really is destroyed, right? Like now the
Yeah.
hospital system is destroyed, the healthcare system is destroyed, the distribution systems are destroyed.
The food.
For people to move, yeah, for people to move back into the middle camps from Rafah, where they have just now started to figure out how to get food aid into these places because the places are moving all the time, right? So they don't logistically, they're not able, it takes them a few days, a few weeks to even set up these camps properly to feed people, and people are feeding themselves, but to organize themselves, it takes a bit of time, and so it's just such a disaster to be moving people from that one place that they had like the worst conditions imaginable, and now somehow they're going to be in some situation that's worse, and it's just brutal. We're like losing contact with our friends. I mean, people are getting swept up. Every time they ask people to move, it's another opportunity for Israel to arrest people, and they just disappear them for weeks on end. Nobody knows where they are. It's just a total nightmare. It's a total nightmare that all the things that don't get reported on the news, that we don't scroll through when we do these, daily news breakdowns, just the individual people are living through each day. And it looked like maybe there was it looked like a, I mean, I believed in the ceasefire talks. I was compelled by the fact that the CIA, Mossad, Shabak, like gave the broad approval for a pause. The pause is a very doable thing. The massive prisoner exchange is complicated, but they could pause the fighting and exchange civilians right now, and Israel could show their people going home. Um, but that's
That's
not
not
what
what
they
they want to
want.
see.
That's not what they
That's
want
not,
to see. They want to see
they
their,
want
they want
blood. They want death. They want to kill children, and they want to make videos about it.
and have parties blocking, like have like literal dance parties blocking aid shipments coming in. And then when that aid shipment does get in and it finally gets across the border, then they shoot the people who are waiting for it on
Or
the other side of
escorting.
the border. We're watching just some of the worst things that we've just ever seen in our life in any context, and it just keeps piling on. So maybe that was a little bit of
That's a
group
good,
therapy
yeah.
at the end.
That's a good note to end on. So we'll be back, guys. We'll be back. I don't even want to ask you to like and subscribe and stuff. I mean, just we'll see you guys in the next video.